Renia Primer for polyurethane, or PUR, is a very versatile helper for dealing with foamed polyurethane soles or other foamed polyurethane materials. The downside of polyurethane in its foam state is that it is susceptible to degradation from exposure to water, to sunlight, to all sorts of environmental influences. And of course, a shoe sole will be exposed to all of that. So, very common problem in shoe repair and shoe modification is that a shoe with a polyurethane sole comes in, it's usually full of water, full of moisture, and it starts crumbling basically as soon as you start cutting into it, start grinding into it. So what can be done? The first important step is always to dry the polyurethane. Polyurethane acts like a sponge, so it absorbs water, and then if the water is still in there, even if you get adhesion on the surface with your chosen adhesive, the water inside the spongy material will come out when it is pressed together. Yeah, the sponge can be compressed, the material can be compressed, the water cannot, so it will push off the adhesive, push it off the surface, and the bond will separate again. How can you get the water out? There are several methods. You can just cut or grind the sole open and let it dry. It takes time. You can try heat gun, or just put it on a heater, put it on a radiator. But the even simpler way is to put it in the press with absorbent paper. Not every shoe will sustain heat, especially if exposed directly to it. So press it very, very carefully, very low pressure, and just draw the moisture out. When the paper stays dry, you're basically in the clear. And then the next step is to make sure that your polyurethane that you have there is still sufficiently stable to really create a good bond, a good combination with the sole you put on and with the adhesive you put on. How do you do that? You can do this with a chemical primer, a reinforcing agent, our primer for polyurethane. This is put onto the foamed polyurethane directly. No need to wait. Put it on and then immediately put the adhesive on. The benefit of that is that the primer interacts with both. If it is still liquid, if it is still active, it can form an additional bond, an additional sort of anchoring system with the polyurethane foam and the adhesive, really link the two together and create a very stable bond. There are limits to this technique, of course. If the polyurethane is breaking apart in chunks, if it's really crumbling away, there is simply nothing you can do. You cannot build a house on sand. It will always just run away, as it will in this case. If the material is breaking apart, you basically either have to give the shoe back to the customer, telling him there's nothing that can be done, or you have to rebuild it all the way up from the upper, put in a new midsole, put on a new outsole, and that is quite an expensive job. But if it's not gone that far, the primer for polyurethane can do a lot of things for you. This works with every Renia adhesive, Col de Cologne, Ortec, Alcofest, Topfit, if you name them. It would work with Syntic Total as well, but in that case it is not necessary. Syntic Total is a polyurethane adhesive of its own right, so it's basically dissolved polyurethane. So it interfaces directly with the PU and it acts in a similar way to the primer in reinforcing the PU. You will need two coats in this case. The first coat acts as a primer, the second coat acts as the actual adhesive. But if you work with Syntic Total, you don't need this. You need to be a little bit careful in handling this active substance here. Like many active chemicals, it can be a bit finicky, a bit problematic to handle. So protect it from direct sunlight, protect it from heat. As you can see, it's in a brown bottle. That's because it is light sensitive. So if you store it in the cold, if you store it in the dark, you will benefit by a greatly enhanced lifespan, a greatly enhanced product shelf life. The refrigerator is ideal. Don't freeze it, but put it in the cold 5, 6, 7 degrees Celsius. That's perfect. Take it out when you need it. The other thing that you need to consider is do not work directly out of the bottle or of the can. It also comes in small cans. Do not work directly out of this, because what you will do, you're dealing with a crumbly material, namely PU, so your brush will always carry some of that crumbled up material back into the bottle, back into the can. And the reaction that is supposed to happen on the material will happen right here in the bottle and inactivate the active substance, and that is not what you want. How can you tell that it has happened? You can tell if the material, if the liquid has turned white, yeah, a white precipitation in here, or the liquid itself is white, so you can actually tell that it is spoiled. The other problem that this has is moisture. So if you leave it open for too long, especially in a high humidity environment, this will also create that white precipitation, and the additive will be basically destroyed. Shelf life of this is roughly 6 months, so it is a bit more susceptible to this than our regular Renia adhesives, but you can always tell if it's still completely clear. If it's not white, then it's fine. Yeah, it's a very, very effective cure for the common ailment of all polyurethane, which is this quick degradation. It has its limits, but if used within those limits, and if it is used while it is still completely clear, it's a great product to have and a very good addition to your adhesive selection.